So we wanted to share with you some of our absolute must-see things you've got to do when you go to these parks. You've got to visit the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. Beautiful yellow rocks along the canyon walls. You've got the river going through. You've got two really great waterfalls, the upper and lower falls that you can see. You know, I always say the upper falls is tops. Water flow going over is just so powerful. It's really neat to be right there on the brink, and it's so easy to get there. But if you go to the lower falls, you get really kind of a bigger view. And, you know, every time we go see it, it's a little bit different. We were there a little earlier in the year last year, and there were waterfalls, like side waterfalls because of the snow melt.
This canyon is carved by the Yellowstone River. That's why you have the upper falls and the lower falls, because that river actually drops off of two falls. And there are several viewpoints on both sides of the canyon that you can go to get some really good looks of it. We were visiting one time and we were looking at the lower falls, and there was a rainbow that came out. And I just remember the lady next to us said, "God is just showing off today." Okay, next up is Old Faithful. You know, this is probably the most famous site actually in Yellowstone. Everybody knows about Old Faithful. They have kind of almost like an amphitheater type seating, or at least circular seating all the way around the geyser that you can sit to watch this, and big crowds will gather. It is a thing because it is faithful. One of the amazing things about Old Faithful is that it was named by the earliest explorers because they saw that it was going off regularly about every hour. And while most of the other geysers in the park have changed over time, Old Faithful pretty much has not. Now, there was an earthquake and it caused a little bit of variation on Old Faithful, but pretty much every 60 to 90 minutes it erupts.
And what I think is so cool is at the Old Faithful Geyser Basin, there's more than Old Faithful. Like, there are miles of boardwalks around there. It's just kind of fun to walk around and see if you can catch some other geysers erupting. Last time we were there, we watched Grand Geyser go off, and it was we had to wait a while, but it was a grand performance. We enjoyed it.
Last time we got sprayed by one of the geysers with our kids. That was really fun. So that's one of the enjoyable things about Yellowstone, is to see those geysers go off. Okay, the next up is the Grand Tetons, the mountain range in Grand Teton National Park. This is really a spectacular mountain range. And what makes it so spectacular is you have this flat valley floor, and then boom, they just jut up out of the floor. They span from north to south throughout the whole park. There's kind of three main peaks in the middle of the park called the Three Tetons. One of them is called the Grand Teton. That's where the park gets its name from.
The main hikes there, like Taggart, Phelps, these are pretty flat hikes that take you by mountain lakes where you're seeing these Tetons as you go. They're just beautiful. Now, of course, there are hikes like Hidden Falls that you do get to climb a little bit and get into the Tetons a bit more. But yeah, just seeing the Tetons from the valley, or seeing them like actually in the Tetons, or even from the gondola at the Teton Village, they're beautiful no matter where you're viewing them.
Just to give you an idea how tall they are, Yellowstone, the valley floor sits quite a bit higher than the Jackson Hole Valley floor in Grand Teton, but the Tetons are higher than the mountains are in Yellowstone. So they just tower up from the floor, which I think is really cool.
Next up is Jenny Lake in Grand Teton. Jenny Lake is so pretty. It just is this big mountain lake, and what we love about it is that we like to go take the shuttle boat across the lake. It's just a short ride, and then we hike up to Inspiration Point and Hidden Falls, and it's just a lovely way to spend the day because you're getting to see a pretty lake. We've even seen wildlife. When we were on our shuttle across, we saw a moose and we saw beavers. It was so cool. And then just that hike up, like Hidden Falls is so fun because it really is hidden, and all of a sudden you turn the corner and there it is. And it's this really big, pretty waterfall. And then the Inspiration Point looking down on the Teton Valley. I mean, just, oh, love it. Love, love, love.
When we were younger, we kayaked on the lake. And then last time we went, we just kind of walked around the shore for a little while. And that was enjoyable too. So many ways to enjoy Jenny Lake.
Oh yeah, and I actually made a freebie guide for you, a free PDF download of how to visit Jenny Lake. So if you are heading on this trip, you ought to check that out in the link below and just get that so you have a little start to planning your trip.
Okay, next up is to look for wildlife. And this is what makes it so cool to visit these parks, and what the reason why we go there all the time is because every trip there is different. These two parks both have grizzly bears. So a lot of times people think of Yellowstone as the bear park, but we've seen several bears in Grand Teton, both black bears and grizzly bears in Grand Teton as well. Remember the one time we saw the little cub climbing up in the bush? Just, oh my gosh, that was awesome. Elk, of course. Elk, if you're up in Mammoth and Yellowstone, elk will just be wandering the street, you know. They're just there all the time. Moose. I love seeing moose. And whenever we go to Grand Teton, we see moose. We never see them up in Yellowstone. I know they're up there, but they're not up there in the same numbers as they are down in the Jackson Hole Valley.
One of the most special things about visiting these parks is you have these experiences with wildlife, and those become the most memorable things you have. And my Aunt Barbara recently passed away last week, actually, and as a child, we would go travel with her and her husband quite a bit to Yellowstone. It was a thing they did every year. And as her grandchildren were talking about her, they remembered going on these trips with Grandma and looking for bears. That's what Grandma wanted to do. And she'd buy her grandkids a stuffed animal, like a stuffed bear, each one of them. And I just think like Yellowstone meant a lot to her, and seeing the bear and the animals meant a lot to her. And I think that's one of the special things just about visiting this area, is that these trips mean a lot to people. Getting to see, we've seen bald eagles, we've seen, just you haven't, you see a wolf, like you just never forget seeing something like that.
Coyote walking in front of you. Yeah, it's great. We could go on forever about the things to do in these places, but we just want to cover maybe 3 sort of under the radar things that we have really come to enjoy that might enhance your trip. So the first thing is to raft the river. There's actually rivers departing from both of these parks and there's river rafting tours on all of them that you can go on. You can't raft in Yellowstone National Park, but the rivers that leave Yellowstone, you can. And so we did the Madison River rafting up near Madison and Bozeman, Montana.
And we tubed it.
We tubed it.
That was on the flotilla, my very favorite of all time.
Yeah, they hooked us all together and we floated down the river, and they'll give you music and you can listen to music and eat snacks while you go. In Jackson Hole in Grand Teton, that is kind of like really famous for the rafting. And so this is something...
Like the whitewater rafting, like adventure rafting.
Yeah, now the whitewater rafting is outside of the park through the Snake Canyon. And it's world famous whitewater rafting. So if you're looking for a place to go whitewater rafting, that's where you go.
Oh yeah, and from personal experience, this is something my family did often growing up. We love rafting the Snake River. And even if you're not super into rafting the river, it's fun to just go watch people raft it and see them get shot out of the raft. But we also did, if that's not your style, there is a wonderful scenic float through Grand Teton, through Triangle X. And we did that a couple years ago with 2 of our smaller children. And that was just a breathtaking ride. That's where we saw
the eagles, beavers, and
Teton.
Incredible.
It's like when you leave the Tetons, you miss those mountains because you just get that beautiful view no matter where you are in the park. And every time we go to leave, I'm just sad I don't get to see that every day.
Nope. Okay, next hidden gem here. In Yellowstone, you'll hear a lot about Lamar Valley and Hayden Valley as places to go see wildlife, but what you never hear about is Madison Valley. And Madison Valley is a place that we've just really come to enjoy quite a bit. We camped near there last time and just walked to the river and hung out. And what was really cool, the last time we visited, we stopped over and we just pulled off the road in Madison Valley just to kind of go check out the river, because it's just a really peaceful, cool little valley.
Yeah, we thought we were all safe and good seeing them across the way, but the herds actually crossed the river. It was, and there were babies swimming across the river, and suddenly they were getting close to us, and we had to hightail it to our car. But it was like one of the most memorable things you've ever seen. It was so cool.
We had never seen a herd of buffalo run like that. And we've seen a million buffalo in our life, but we've never seen a herd run like that. And they were running right at us. So that was a spectacular experience. Just really cool. So Madison Valley is a place where we've seen bears and elk and bison, and nobody ever talks about it. Kind of funny.
Yeah. All right. Our next one are playhouses. So a lot of times we go to these national parks for the nature, but it's fun to mix in some activities too. And both Yellowstone and Grand Teton have wonderful playhouses. The Play Mill just in West Yellowstone, we've been to several productions there. We think that they have some pretty top-notch performers, and we love that before the shows, they do like an audience sing-along. They even called our assistant Liz onto the stage and made her dance with them before one of them one time. It's just a real fun, family-friendly, upbeat, plays are about $30 each, but they're really fun. And then we went to the Jackson Hole Playhouse in in Jackson, and that is a really cool old building. And they had a very fancy dinner before that was optional, but it was really good. And then the whole production we saw Annie Get Your Gun. It was so well done. Like both experiences we just loved. Like I said, Jackson Playhouse, maybe that's just a good activity for me and Matt because it's expensive, but like bring the whole family to the Playhouse. Our kids love the Playhouse in Yellowstone.
Yep. Like I mentioned, there's so many things to do in these parks. So we have created an itinerary where the best sites are grouped together efficiently to help you have a really good game plan to go visit these places. We're going to talk about this more in detail later, But we are also putting a link in the description here below the video if you want to go check it out now.